Divine Source, Great Spirit, we call on you this day once again to be informed by your love and your grace, to receive the healing of your light, to be shown the world and ourselves anew. We thank you for calling us to this task today, and we look forward to all that you would reveal to us. And so it is.
Welcome to Talking Spirit. My name is Yuta, and I'm back with my friend Elizabeth.
Greetings, everyone.
And we felt to come together today to explore an idea around symbols. And as I was sitting with it in prayer this morning, I just had sort of a story developing in my mind around, the way we find ourselves in this world. It's like we're constantly taking in everything that we perceive through our senses, and in a way that, everything around us can be seen as symbols. And, when we come together for these talks, we're always wanting to come from an interpretation for everything that we address that comes from beyond our little minds and little fields of vision, so to speak, and access a higher interpretation. And I was sitting just with this idea of these symbols all around us, that a lot of them, we have some past interpretations for them, like the black cat crossing our paths could be seen as a bad omen because maybe that's what our grandma told us. Or the four-leaf clover could be seen as a good luck charm, and it's always pretty exciting to find one. And really, any of the symbols that we come across, just a bird flying across our path could be a symbol for something from the spirit in our journey to awakening. And so we often, before we do these recordings, we'll play with oracle cards and tarot cards, because we found them to be ways for us to access messages from the spirit that maybe otherwise we wouldn't get with the clarity that we do through the symbols on the cards, or whatever words pop up on the cards, and accessing also these kind of deeper archetypal energies to kind of usher us along on our journeys. And I find it always really exciting and revealing to pull cards and look at them. So just this idea of symbols, and just the fact alone that the mind can use any symbols that it comes across for the awakening. So we'll just explore that, and we'll see what comes out. What do you have to say, Elizabeth?
Well, I wasn't really thinking we were going to have a start off with course talk. I love A Course in Miracles. It's been deeply helpful to me throughout the years. I'm connected with Yuta because of it. But, it's not like I see myself as a student of, which a lot of people do. But I was just hearing the whole nothing I see means anything, which is, one of the lessons that you work with in the early part of the workbook. And the spirit is trying to show us that we've given meaning to everything in the world. And so, as you said in the intro, we're constantly coming up against our beliefs and our perceptions and having to try to interpret it. And for me, trying to interpret the world from that place of personality, conditioning, etc., was really crazy making. And I've needed a reinterpretation of my way of thinking and my way of seeing the world and seeing myself. And So, as you said, these symbols are constantly coming back to us to have us look at them. What's this mean? What's the meaning in this? Well, the spirit's been teaching us they don't mean anything other than your own mind stuff. And yet they can be used for a deep inner exploration, a deep journeying into our minds. And as you said, that's how you and I have been inspired to use them. I was thinking of when I was a kid, I don't know how the idea of tarot cards came across my mind, but that's something that we've talked about, Oracle Tarot. There was also the symbols of like astrology as a kid. Lots of people of my generation would know like Linda Goodman's star signs. It was before tarot and astrology were kind of more mainstream. That was like the thing that you got. You might have gotten a little booklet in your Cosmopolitan magazine that would tell you the year ahead in your star sign symbolism, right? So I remember as a kid wanting to have reflected back, who am I? What am I? And that was one example of where I went for some deeper interpretation of me beyond this little personality. So the idea of the mythic symbols and the idea of the perceptual distortions that we might have in our mind, spirit's been doing that dance, I'm sure, with all of us, but I'm very aware of that dance in my own mind, that the spirit's been trying to show me beyond this little personality of Elizabeth, beyond being a daughter, a sister, a worker, a student, an athlete, whatever, right? So these symbols can be used to help us learn about ourselves. Know thyself. That's vital to this experience if we want to transcend the worldly experience. And so to know thyself, the spirit will play with us with symbols. And I thought we might be a little more in the divination, oracle card, tarot thing. It may expand beyond that. And so I just felt guided to look up the definition of divination because I was really in this place of, for me as a kid, I wanted those things to be predictive. I wanted to look at something like tarot or my horoscope and hear what was coming and get ahead of it or, figure something out. And as I matured and was in my journey, it really became this message of it is a communication device. If you use it that way, it can just simply be a communication device for me with spirit. And that's pretty much how I use it at this point. Some people use a weather app because they want to know what the weather is outside. Well, I use an oracle deck or a tarot because I want to know the weather inside. I may feel like, oh, I'm pretty happy today, but something feels a little funny. And maybe I got a resentment I'm not clear on, or maybe I've got a fear that's showing up unconsciously that wants my attention. So for me, I kind of use it like my inner weather map. And it's not a predictive, try to control the world, use it from my personality level. It's an elevated thing that I use with the spirit to enhance my communication with the spirit. I saw a YouTube video a couple of years ago. I didn't listen to it, but the title was something like, Why I Gave Up the Tarot Because It Was Leading Me to the Devil. Those are thought forms that are there. And any tool can be used for good or for bad. You can have $1 million and invest it in helping people spiritually grow. Or you can take $1 million and try to destroy a whole community because you want to make more money and you're going to wipe them all out of their homes and relocate them because you want more money. Everything has two sides to it in this realm of duality, good and bad, right and wrong, all the rest, right? Well, I want to be done with the good and bad and right and wrong, and I just want to be in the channel with spirit. So the platform of how I use these tools is for that purpose. You always bring it back to what's the purpose behind it. You always call that forth. That's the power of your connection with spirit, right? Is that you get that download out there for all of us, right? I'm speaking to it because you're calling it forth with me, right? So that's what those kinds of tools are for me, and that's what's coming forward as you invite me into this. So thanks.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. While you were talking, I was just thinking of, kind of before I stepped on my own spiritual path. It was like I was swimming in the world and like almost like, yeah, asleep. And everything that was happening around me, I would just take it as it seemed, like at face value. Any kind of upsetting situations or whatever it was, like I didn't really think anything of it. It was just, this is the way the world is, and this sucks, and this is nice, and I want more of this, and I don't want more of that. And then kind of starting to get the wake up call, it gave me a whole new look on the world. And just as I'm speaking now, it brings up a movie. I don't remember the name now, but basically the premise of it is that the main character seems to be a game developer, and she's developing this virtual reality game. And when you're in it, it really feels real and feels like the real world. And as you watch the movie, like things start to develop, and that layer of her being the game developer really is just a layer, and actually there's something higher than that, where she's a very different uh, personality and being. And so I remember watching that movie basically when I first joined the spiritual community that I was a part of. And after watching that movie, I was walking around, and like I was touching the walls in our little home there, and it all felt very unreal. And it wasn't like an experience that kind of spun me out. It was more like, wow, yeah, maybe this isn't really as I thought it was. And it was kind of like the first sort of experience of this world um, being, like you said, the meaning that I give it. And when I take back the meaning, it was almost like it really wasn't real. And I was walking around in a dream, which is a thing that, we do talk about sometimes, and all these traditions talking about this place being a dream world. And even just that symbol of dreaming, I'm thinking now, when we look at our nighttime dreams, there's always stuff going on, and the way dreams traditionally have been interpreted is by symbols and taking everything as a symbol for something else. And I think, having been on this journey for a little while now, that's kind of the way I see everything. Like everything is a symbol for something else, and the spirit always has an interpretation for the things that go on around me, go on inside of me. And yeah, that kind of new interpretation is what I seek all the time. um like if I seem to experience some kind of roadblock in a plan I try to execute or something, I can either look at it and think, oh well, I guess I'm not supposed to go that way, or well, maybe it's a call for taking a little pause and looking maybe at some different angles about it, and then the roadblock might completely disappear. So even with those symbols I mentioned in the introduction, that cat, the black cat crossing my path. I love when animals cross my path, because I always feel like spirits with me, especially if there is something going on for me. And yeah, I always um, it catches my attention. And there's a lot of birds around me all the time. There's crows and pigeons and little blue tits, and just all of these little fluttering symbols that there's movement and there can be lightness when I may be feeling heavy. And yeah, even I think tarot was kind of a part of my journey here and there a little bit, but I sort of laid it down when I really got into the Course in Miracles, because it felt like I wanted to really devote all my studies and all my thinking to that path, be very focused on one thing. And then when you and I sort of came across each other, you brought that whole symbol back into my life and my process, and it's been a really amazing symbol because it does, yeah, like there's always a prayer as I'm shuffling, and um like you said, like when I'm not quite sure what's going on, I can bring out a deck and just see what comes out, just see what pops out. And then even as I'm looking at it, like especially with the traditional tarot, there are like all of these very traditional interpretations, and in the story of the tarot, each card has a very specific meaning. And I found it helpful to look at those and take them in, and you know notice some of the specific symbols that are on these cards. And then the more I'm using them, the more it's actually just the spirit in my mind making their interpretations. And sometimes they're very different from uh, from the traditional ideas, because the spirit is, using what pops out of the deck very specifically to my situations in the moment. So yeah, that was just kind of some of the things that were coming up as you were speaking, and yeah, as we're kind of sitting in this idea together.
Yeah, I love I love what you said about how you work with that tool of an oracle card or a tarot deck. For me, as I'm shuffling, show me what I need to see,
Mm,
Spirit. Show me what I need to see. Show me what I'm not seeing. Show me the messages, you know. And it's not a good or a bad or a right or a wrong. It's just that's where I've been led.
mm,
And it may not work for anybody else, you know. And if it's useful to you, great. And if not, throw it in the fire.
mm,
It's just the spirit needs to work with our psyches in ways that speak to us. And for me, it did become a more playful way to try to look at myself. It became a little lighter over time. In the beginning, like it's like if I had an oracle deck that had a black cat on it, it might have made me go, ugh, and it would activate potentially some fear in my mind. It didn't activate it in a way of implanting it in my mind. It activated it in a way of saying, here's a symbol, Elizabeth, that you've got to charge around and you can't take it with you. And over time, it was reinterpreted in lots of different ways. And, for me, I did a journey through Peruvian shamanism because there was some history of my greater journey that needed to be revealed to me and healed for me. And so in that came what I would think of as a spirit ally, you might say, was this amazing jaguar, Otorongo, this incredible gift of a symbol from the spirit that for me is like a reflection of my intuition and is a reflection of a fierceness that I seem to have through spirit to go into dark places, to go where I might otherwise not want to go. And so Otorango comes when I need to feel safe and secure. That's a symbol the spirit uses in my mind to say, I've got you. It's safe to look here with me, Elizabeth.
mm,
It's safe to go into this dark place for somebody else's healing. Like, I'll use you to go and help this other person look at something that's scary to them. So that reinterpretation that you've spoken about, I experience it over and over again. And, you know, I also don't come to any of the symbols when I'm in that space, even looking at it the way that I did before. Like, yeah, usually now a black cat means spirit as an ally. But
mm,
sometimes the black cat still comes in as, hey, there might be a little danger that you need to be aware of. Not danger in the ultimate sense of the spirit, but like worldly stuff is going on that you need to have yourself awake and aware to. I still seem to be in the world. So I still need to have my intuition working in the worldly realm, even though my prayer is to be in that state of elevated thinking and alignment, right? So it's one of these, like we've talked in other talks about the dance in and out of the worlds, in and out of the realms. And the other thing that you said that was showing up really strongly was I have a friend of mine who came and did some talks. I'm not sure if the talk will be before this one or after. We're kind of playing with when these things will be published. But he and I came together in this container of prayer and meditation and painting. And within that first couple of weeks of knowing each other, we went back and I was doing a retreat. It was telepathic animal communication thing. And he was there with me just having a retreat. I was doing a class. Well, we sat on this lawn one day and we're talking. And then all of a sudden we dropped in deep and we went into that, ooh, where are we? Soupiness. Everything got fractally, everything got wavy, everything got bright and weird, right? Weird in terms of how my personality seems to experience the world all the time. We both were like looking at each other, morphing in and out of these different faces and shapes, right? We went into the quantum strangeness.
Hmm.
And those experiences show us something you said about the movie. They show us what's beyond these images. It's undefined and it's undivided light. And we were being given a little peek at that. We get to have these revelatory, expansive, whatever experiences so that the spirit can say, these symbols are really seductive. And there's a whole lot more that's of much more interest to you beyond them. And so, these symbols, again, I try to not even invest in the reinterpretation of them because we need to be fluid and awake and aware and, to constantly be dying to what we think any of this means. And, it's, I see a lot of people that walk around the world with seeming demonstrations of, I've got it all figured out. This is all perfectly clear to me. Well, that's not my experience. I find this to be a pretty strange place. And so I find that I need to stay and continue to have my mind opened. There's so much going on than the muggle world will lead you to believe. And it is, in fact, trying to keep us asleep, not as a dark conspiracy theory. It's just what's happening here. So these symbols, the spirit can work with, again, to elevate us out of it, or we can use the symbols to stay invested in the story of me, I, my, and the world. And, the choice most days is pretty clear for me, but sometimes it gets confusing.
Absolutely. Just as you were talking, it brought back a memory of when there's a specific deck I have, which is called the Lightseer's Tarot. And it's a very bright kind of deck. And I did a lot of research before I got it because I wanted to get one that I could really work intuitively with, where it wasn't sort of the traditional imagery that maybe most people are familiar with in terms of a tarot deck. But I got it, and it came with a little sort of process to do before you even used it, which was to go through and look at every card and pick out the one that felt like it was sparking the light in your mind, and then to find the card basically that you felt a big aversion to. And the one that I found a huge aversion to is a card now that I really like. And
Mm.
I think it's the Five of Pentacles. Is that the one where sort of the people are like stuck outside the church in the cold? I think it might be that one. But in this specific deck, it's a woman sort of sitting, hunched over in front of a closed door, but the key is laying right next to her. And when I first saw that card, it just felt like a very sort of helpless, I'm a small victim card. And even the fact that I have the key, I didn't like it because it meant that my story wasn't true. And now, like, I love when that card comes up because it's like, oh, there's just something, there's a little tweak in my mind that's needed. And I can see that whatever I think I'm stuck in isn't really the way it is. And I have the tools to get out of it. So I love, yeah, it's kind of like what you were saying about things shifting in terms of the interpretation and, symbols being used to show us what's in our minds that seems to be dark and in shadow and things that we'd rather not look at. And, as we do kind of go towards them, there's a depth in there that it shows us actually. I think for me, it's like the more I work with the things I don't find comfortable, the more I step towards that discomfort and look at the things I might not want to see in the moment, the more unreal they actually get. And the more I can see that there's stories running, and I don't need to necessarily continue running those stories. And the whole meaning of whatever symbols, it really shifts. And another one is in the tarot, the whole sword spread.
Mm.
When I first started working with tarot, I just did not like the sword cards because it always felt like something negative was coming up. Like all the sword cards just seemed like they were showing me something negative. Like the Three of Swords is usually a heart pierced by three swords, and there's symbols of death in that spread. And I just hated when they would come up. When they would come out of the deck, I would be like, oh, okay, what do I got to deal with now? And you know it was just this journey with the swords that, like, as I'm continuing to let these kind of cards come out, and if I don't immediately jump to like that, I hate this and this is something awful, the spirit has these amazing interpretations of those cards, like, you don't need this anymore, or you're done with this now. And it's just a much gentler voice interpreting, um, because I'm working with it. It does shift in my mind. All of the stories shift in my mind around these symbols of swords and, having a heart stabbed and being dead in the battlefield. Because I think like initially when I would have these symbols come up with the swords, it would always feel like I'm doing something wrong, and I'm doing this to myself. And of course that is the case, but I wouldn't like having that reflected back because it would just push me into guilt, and then I wouldn't be able to come out of it. And now there's a much softer view of those kind of cards that actually, like, I've worked with the guilt, and my mind is much less willing to go into guilt with these kind of with those kind of symbols. So that's a really nice thing that's sort of happened on this meandering journey with tarot and its symbols and traditional meanings. And yeah.
Yeah, it's great that you brought in the movie earlier.
Mm.
And I keep trying to remember the woman's name. I can see the movie. You told me about it. I think it was Jude Law in it.
Jude
The
Law.
woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the woman, I can't get her name at the moment. But anyway, it's okay. We'll put it in the notes if we can remember it, because it's a great movie. But what was coming up about it was in the community that you've been most associated with, David Hoffmeister, he was given the idea of using movies as a means for awakening. It's the same thing, right? It's just a story being told through these cards. It's the same thing as a story being told on the movie screen. And the idea that you can go within yourself to do the healing. And in fact, that's the only place you can go, is inside to do the healing. And that the world of images, there's no going out there. I was brought up in a Quaker family, even though we didn't have an obvious practicing element, but a history of ancestors. And I went to Quaker schools throughout my life. And in that arena, there's a lot of activism, a lot of go out and be in service. Beautiful symbol, wonderful. And if the spirit is going to use you that way in the world, great. But I found on my first peace walk in freshman year of high school, going to protest something, right? Like save the nuns down in Nicaragua or something. I was there with my little candle and I got the download. Oh my God, this is separation. It's us against them. It's right and it's wrong. And I could spend the rest of my life carrying my little candle, praying for peace for one group over another. Like I got that there was not going to be any usefulness for me, for the way I was seeing it, to go out and be that kind of servant. And that the only hope was going to be within myself, is what spirit was showing me that day. Again, other people may wake up in that arena, they may be guided to be there, but for me, spirit was like, nope, this is not where you're going to find your healing. This is not where you're going to be in service. And this is not where the greater whole is going to wake up. And so this idea of the spirit using story to show us what we need to see, very much so for me. And like David Hoffmeister, spirit has used movies my whole life since I was a kid for the same purpose. And so when I learned of him, it was like, I totally get you. I'm hearing the same messages. Thank you very much. And today when I heard to pick two more charms. I got this beautiful spread of everything we're talking about. And at the end, I heard to pick two more. And one of them is a peace symbol, you might say. And you might also say it's a message of Jesus. I'm not going to give the symbol because it just is not going to be helpful. But the other one was a Singer sewing machine. And in the native idea of cosmology, I'm not going to speak for native people, but there are certain so-called native groups that talk about weaving the dream world, weaving a new story, weaving the fabric of our oneness. And that's what these symbols can be used for. We have to dream a new dream, from the dream of separation, from the dream of trauma, drama, war, us against them. If you go out in the world, you're going to see the mess, right? And you're going to see people trying to find the solutions and the healing out there, fixing some mechanism of the world. And Yuta and I, as far as I know, Yuta's experience, we've been told by the spirit, doesn't work that way. The only healing is to be found in your own mind. And so these are tools that keep reflecting for me, where am I hung up? What am I believing that's a misperception? Where am I in a story that is really causing me a lot of difficulty and dysfunction, and most importantly, keeping me from serving my purpose? That's just the way it seems to have unfolded for me. And from course terms, again, because of you, people will come in on that level. It says that we have to have a happy dream before we can wake up. We talked about the light experiences, and one of the cards that I picked was illumination. The experiences that I've had where spirits revealed to me a blast of light or showed me how really tenuous this reality structure is, uh, I found them scary. I found them to my personality to be disturbing enough that I bounced back out of them.
Mhm.
And at the same time, they were so beautiful and so natural and so like, oh, could I be there again now that I'm not as scared of it? So the mind is scared of the light. It's scared of the love that is that light. And so we have to be given stories that are softer, gentler. We do have to have the reinterpretation, or we're just going to keep playing out death and destruction, for another couple million eons. And to find that happy dream, the symbols have to be explored. You have to go as you did, into the cards or into the stories or into the energies that we have resistance to. That's where the healing's to be found. And, in the end, it says in the Course, the world will end in laughter. Fantastic. I'll
Mhm.
take it. Let's go there today. That's why you and I come together, because we want that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love it all because you're talking about movies and stories and weaving and sort of this dream weaving. Because one of the cards I pulled is shadow, and I was just looking at this shadow card, and it made me think of the story of the cave. And
Mhm.
you know, I'm sure many people are familiar with it, but it's this basic premise that there's these people kind of tied down in a dark cave, and behind them is a flame, a candle, a fire, and in front of them is a wall, something to project shadows onto. And, the people that are sitting there tied down, that's all they know. They're watching these shadows and they're seeing scary images, basically, and they know nothing else until there is a wake up call, and maybe one of them turns around and sees, what's really going on here? Let me just look
Mhm.
around. It's kind of the Percy Jackson story all over again.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
um, and starts to just have this openness in their mind that maybe what they're seeing isn't really what it is. And maybe they're actually just watching projections, stories in the mind projected outward onto a screen that we may, call the world. And there comes a point where you don't really want to watch them anymore, and you'd rather go into the real world. And yeah, like you said, in a way, like in the cave story, that walking out of the cave into the seemingly real world in that case is still another layer of the dream, but it is the happy dream. It's where we have awareness of, our reality in God, even though we seem to still find ourselves in a body and in a world of specifics. But there's a new interpretation on what's seen, that you know you start to shine the light on your mind, and the shadows do go away. And yeah, so that's kind of what sprung up as you were talking about movies and dream weaving, and yeah, just this meditation around the shadow. Yeah, because yeah, we're either seeing the shadow, or we're seeing the interpretation of the spirit, which comes from the light. So yeah, it's a continuous sort of path of using everything that's given to us, which seem to be all of these specific things around us and inside of us, and in relationships and in movies and songs and poems and books, and just walking down the path and seeing a license plate that has a 111 on it or something, or a 666, and
Mhm.
using, allowing the spirit to use all of those things for our awakening, which it is, like you said, it does make for a much more fun journey. It's like a constant discovering or rediscovering of the light in our minds. That's kind of how it feels for me. I feel like my mind is very primed to looking for symbols of um, light and symbols of like not necessarily positive interpretations, but um, true, like interpretations of that bring me towards truth in my mind. Yeah, I just feel like my mind is really primed towards that now, and it makes for a much nicer dream. And I think it also makes for a much easier connection with the spirit. And isn't that what the spirit really wants? He wants the happy learners, like A Course in Miracles talks about. He wants the happy learners. And so we do have to get sort of the unhappy stories out of the mind so that we can be in that happy, easygoing, light sort of place in our minds. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you said something that I think is important that's in this undercurrent before we close out, if we're closing
Mm,
in on it, that,
yeah.
it's not we have to stay awake and aware to not using those positive symbols to like Pollyanna ourselves out of here, the love and light movement, no offense, but
Mm,
we have to deal with that darkness. What you're talking about is a real experience, those three swords in the heart, I can't tell you how many experiences I've had where I felt like that's what was happening to me, that was my experience, but they've genuinely been the things that had to go. They had to be stripped out of my thinking. I had to face betrayal ideas. I had to face abandonment ideas. I had to face, being stabbed in the back ideas that were in my mind. And so, these symbols, um, we've got to be honest with, like everything else, we've got to be honest with ourselves about what they're meaning to us, and not just sort of put some fairy dust, on the darkness and hope that that's going to help us get through. Everything is about this deep dismantling of who and what we think.
mm,
And everything can be used for good or bad. Everything can be used for just making it, propping it up, propping up the story of me and making it look okay and acting as if. There's a lot of that messaging. Just act as if until you get there. Well, I tried acting as if for a long time. It doesn't work, you know. I did pretty well. Like I seem to have a physical body and a mind that the world accepts, but that didn't do it, right? You can't pretend your way into awakening. You can't lie your way into awakening. It's fierce, like those swords. It's a fierce, fierce journey. And those swords sting and seem to cut. And they are vital because we're carrying around a lot of gunk, and they can feel really harsh at times, but they're vital, they're necessary. So again, there just felt like there was something that you brought up that was really important, about just staying awake to the way we then use the symbols, as spirit starts to reveal more. We have to have an authentic experience of the purification. And when we do go through the deep dismantling, we can genuinely come out the other side where the symbols, we're not sugarcoating it. We're not making it look pretty. It's a genuine experience of, oh, my heart has lightened up. Oh, the spirit did take those 3 swords or those 10 swords out of my back that I had put there. And we're not pretending about it. We're not just smiling our way down the street, even though inside we're just bawling our eyes out, right? So for some reason that needed to be said a little more specifically. So
yeah, beautiful. It's a nice tying up of many different things we've talked about today. So thank you for that. And I think we'll just leave here and allow the space for all of what we've shared to be used in meditation. And yeah, we're as always, grateful for anybody who joins us for these. And as always, it's really for our own minds and for our own healing. And I'm really grateful for that. And I really enjoy this topic. And it's nice to join in it. So thank you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Lots of love.
Bye.